I know none of you all have asked for this, but I love this show. So I finally had to get in the mix here. And that's why I'm getting ready to recap and review episode 6 of Special Ops Lioness. And this episode is The Lie is the Truth. And this episode was crazy. But what's really special about this episode is finally, after all the promotional materials, all the promotional work, the trailers and all that other good stuff, we finally get to see Morgan Freeman as his character Edwin, who I got to say when we get to it, oh, that was probably one of the best scenes of the season. Because, man, did it get spicy. Man, did it get messy. Whew, things were intense. But let's start from the top here with Cruz. And Cruz is still navigating this whole thing with Aaliyah. And Aaliyah is still a big question mark for us. I don't know if I trust her. We all know what side she's on. We all know that she's being used for operation. But Cruz seemed to find some level of interest within her. And ultimately, at the end of this episode, we know what happened. But in the beginning, things were definitely feeling kind of, But also, I think it's an understanding of both of these characters. I think they both had their previous struggles. And we've seen a lot of Cruz, obviously, in the beginning parts of the season. But I think with Aaliyah, she opens up a lot more. And now that her friends are gone, we see that maybe there's a level of like desperation because she doesn't have anybody around her. Maybe she doesn't have anybody to converse with. So maybe like her last and final hope is to work something with Cruz. Is it genuine? Is it? I don't know. I just feel like I feel like they're gonna pull the chair from under us at the finale. So I'm still very much reserved about this whole relationship between Cruz and Aaliyah. But listen, Cruz very much knows she is in too deep and now they're friends. So funny thing there. But then going into these this group of 3 that decides they're gonna break into the wrong house, little they know it or not. And it's funny too, because all the soldiers and whatnot, they're kind of just was bored. They want something to do. And man, did they not know what they were going to have in store for the night. And I think this was cool because, like, I think even when certain episodes tend to focus on certain characters, they still do give you something with some of these other characters. So it was really cool to kind of see all of the other folks kind of having something to do, kind of getting their moments in, kind of having some funny one-liners and whatnot. I thought it was really cool that they were able to like really work that out to make that make sense, because I think easily you could have just said like, well, we don't have anything mission related for them, so maybe we can just hold out to next episode. They say no, we'll give them something. We'll work something out that makes sense here. And somehow, some way, Bobby just continues to be my favorite here. This character just always finds a way to just make moments and scenes like hilarious, very low key. So yeah, we'll talk more about that in a second, because we really need to talk about the biggest part of this episode here. And that is the debriefing. And as I mentioned, we finally get the introduction to Morgan Freeman character Edwin Mullins, who, first of all, with Morgan Freeman, I think there's a certain level of expectation. And how this meeting initially started was definitely kind of just laying out all the information. We certainly do get a very hard interrogation of certain characters. I mean, everybody pretty much got it. I think Joe got it at a point. And just everybody got it at a point, But I think I was curious to say, would Edwin be taking a seat back in this, or how was this all going to play out? And he wasn't short for words initially because he had to get some things off his chest, as he should, in terms of an introduction, because this is a character that's been observing everything that's happening. We just haven't had to get to see him get some screen time to kind of relay his emotions, his stance about everything. But the moment that he gets to unleash, it gets wild. First of all, Cal, who has always been like a character that we always were like, what's Cal's stance with everything? Like, we see Cal very much not on the same page as Joe, but I think Now that we see that everybody has their own sort of position, there's not no right or wrong side. Everybody just has their different stance. And by all means, before, and I had to kind of switch up my notes a little bit here. Before I wanted to hand the victor of this exchange of, of blows to one another in this conversation that's happening, I initially said Michael Kelly killed this scene. And I also kind of agree with Byron's stance with this until Edwin comes in and sends them off and says, now you can make those t-shirts. So like, it was a lot of humor. There was a lot of truth. There was a lot of perspectives about it that I appreciate. And it just makes things so much more interesting going forward. I also want to say, like, let's not forget that the Meads were across the table from one another. So I am a little interested about how that plays out, because I got to say that Kaitlyn was definitely not having it. She didn't want to talk to no one afterwards. And I think after really getting served by her husband, getting, you know, really no support from Joe, I think she just kind of was just like, whatever. But Nicole Kidman has been fantastic this season. Like, and I expect no less, you know what I mean? But Michael Kelly definitely was he's always a treat, but he absolutely killed it this scene. And Morgan Freeman steps in and does what he does, you know? But I think, like, you know, the perspective that's interesting is understanding that while it's been a topic this entire season about Texas and this kill mission, all these things happening on American soil, which we as the viewers, I think, can see good in it. It's interesting to kind of get that perspective about what the perception looks like. And then once folks really start to dive into it, like, could the local PDs have done such? Absolutely not. And are you sure that no one is aware that the CIA was behind this? You know, and is there anything digitally out there or whatever? So like, I get it. So like, it does really brings the viewers into like a perspective of things that you really don't initially acknowledge. So this conversation was really good. Also note to Viacom and Paramount Plus to making sure they use all their properties. They talk about CBS News, and I was thinking to myself, like, CBS News, like, I don't know, is that even a real thing? Could be, I don't know, not my thing. But I've realized that beyond that, we'll talk about it in a second, they made sure that they utilize their properties under the Viacom umbrella and not giving credit to nobody else. Because they easily could have said CNN or Fox, but they was like, nah, we're going with our stuff, you know what I mean? But with that being said, going back to Cruz and Aaliyah, they're getting ready for a movie night, and well, this is funny because they're watching Paranormal Activity, also under the Paramount umbrella here. And I think it's funny that they use that. Paranormal Activity is one of my favorite films, so I thought it was funny, and I thought they came into a good scene. But it's them really bonding. And beyond that, they go from Paranormal Activity to The Notebook. So they go from being scared to crying. And truly, I think this is Aaliyah truly showing her vulnerability and also filling in the void. She doesn't have her friends around her. She doesn't have her paparazzi, you know. And I think at this point now, like, this is just her really trying to fill in the void. And like, and even in the beginning with like letting Cruz sort of get an R&R, like a self-care day. And this is her making it up to her. So I think she's really feels sorry about the predicament and what happened to Cruz and her being left. But, you know, the truth behind Cruz, you know, opening up about being beat by men, which is half truth, half lie, instead of saying it was a car accident, I think, like, they're building trust. But I think it's a very, very scary game because, well, we know Cruz's intentions. If they change or not, that's going to be up for determination. But Aaliyah was the one we just aren't sure. We just aren't sure, like, what her ultimate goal may be. And like, there's a lot of reasons to like have a level of like empathy and sympathy for her, you know, being this daughter of this terrorist here, and her talking about she's not allowed to choose love in her country. She's never felt love. And her to desire it would be death is a wild thing to really like put into perspective here. So I don't know, man, it's gonna be a wild one. I really feel like they're gonna pull the chair from under us come the finale here. But what else we got here? So going back to now everybody, because everybody got their balls busted, we kind of see like what's next. So Cal is at the bar getting drunk. Joe gets a call about what's happening back And now it's for her to solve this problem. They got 3 regular lame folks trying to rob a house that they had no clue who was inside of it. These QRF members, and they can't just let them go. They can't let the PD go. But like now it's in terms of, and that, especially after this meeting, about being under the radar in terms of the things they've done. So like this is definitely like a real time lessons learned thing for them. But they send Kyle, and Kyle negotiates. And Kyle's like, well, what do I get for this? Do I get the plane? Okay, cool. The private jet, do I get that? All right, cool. And what type of hush money do I get? And I love how Nicole Kidman's character, Kaitlyn's like, listen, if it's more than 10 apiece, I'm buying a car wreck and I'm telling the cops everything. I don't know what that meant entirely, but that was like a wild thing in terms of her saying like, if this becomes too much of an expense, we're just going to just make do with this in a way that's not as clean as what Kyle expertise is. But yeah, he gets there, the folks already done pissed their pants, and he does what he does best. He gets the DNA swabbing, lets them know that like, listen, you tell anybody that's happened here, we have your DNA. You're a threat. Your family and everybody you know is a threat. Gave them $10K each and let them go. Told her, do not look back. Can't even believe that airhead of a dude says, what about our shoes? He says, these are our shoes. Like, what? They're idiots. To me, I don't trust them. I feel like it would only be right that we see them be eliminated somewhere down the line. I do not trust these 3 folks. But I thought it was hilarious that they came in there trying to rob for whatever, and they all came up $10K each, so that's like $30,000. That's a come up to pee your pants and get $10K. That's a come up, and now just to not have to talk about it ever again. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's how they do it. But yeah, nonetheless, I would never want to be in that predicament because that seemed to be hella scary. And much like I talk about Bobby being one of my favorite characters, Bobby didn't like the idea of smelling like piss, and Bobby definitely was probably looking for another way to handle this situation here. But I can't believe they got let go easy. I was for sure on the edge of my seat, like, oh, something's going to happen here. Going back to Aaliyah and Cruz, like I said, they're crying over the notebook down and talking about what loves means to one another and whatnot. And then going back to Joe and Neil, they have their nightcap. Joe is getting the house prepared to make it more wheelchair friendly, talking about Kate and, being on the morphine and this, as he describes, sort of the less of the evils here, but it's definitely a hard road back for recovery. And then they say, like, let's get a couple of sessions in before she has to go overseas. So I think with Joe and Neil is there's like, as they say, they want to really clear the air. They don't want to have any secrets. They don't want to have any more band-aids, as they say. They want to be honest and genuine with one another. I think this is a good route and approach for them. I think that Joe is still living a life that Neil doesn't fully understand. I think like even by the previous episode of looking at what happened with the kill mission and how it hits the news, that he realizes that like, or was it this episode, that, his wife is really capable of some things that are like really change, like they're societal pivoting changes that all eyes are witnessing. And he's sitting here right under it, kind of like, I can't believe like she's actually capable of this. So these are the type of things that she do. And I think he's really like swallowing his words, maybe for the lack for obviously there's more important things to be talking about between the two of them, but maybe because he wants to really prevent conflict. But I don't think he's very settled with the idea of what all she does. And I think they're definitely coping in different ways. Definitely the wine and the nightcaps. But like, something about Neil just makes me feel like he's just really not comfortable with everything that she does. And I think him looking at the monitor, looking at what happened, really puts it into perspective. And she kind of looks over as if like, she's, pretty much immune to it. She's just conditioned in a way that she doesn't feel anything about what he does. And that is the line of the job. But I think like Neil feels things from this. And I think like, that may be a little bit of a conflict from now. I don't expect too much from the rest of the season for that, but I think it has to be like a background mental thought of what the two of them and their inner conflict outside of Kate and her recovery, what does that road look like for them? So, but this was a great episode. It's great to finally get Morgan Freeman on screen. We got 2 more episodes to go after this. I'll be here covering it, and I'll give her a whole season recap. I love this show, and I've just been watching, having so much fun, and I realized, like, yo, I need to put something out with this. I don't see too many people covering this. So I was like, let me get in there and provide a little bit of something real quick. But if you are watching this, if you are enjoying this, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And y'all already know what it is. We back with more reviews and content very soon. Thank you for watching, folks.